The lecture hall of Astraeon Interspecies Academy hummed with the quiet rhythm of concentrated minds. Holographic diagrams rotated mid-air, casting shifting reflections across rows of scaled, furred, feathered, and human faces. Lyra Hale sat near the center, posture straight, eyes steady, absorbing every detail of the transparent neural interface model drifting above the instructor's desk. To an outsider, she looked like any ordinary human student, dark hair tied back, uniform crisp, expression calm. Inside, her mind moved in quiet calculations, a habit drilled into her since childhood. Observe first, act second. That rule had kept her balanced in a place where most species still weren't sure whether humans were allies or unpredictable anomalies. The lights flickered. A pulse rolled through the hall, low and mechanical, followed by a red band flashing across every wall. Alert, unauthorized access detected. Sector 5. Students stiffened. The instructor, a crystalline Viori whose body refracted the emergency lights into fractured color, paused mid-sentence. Before he could speak, the doors slammed open. A squad of armored Academy security guards marched through, boots pounding in synchronized steps. Leading them was Zyrak Vorwin, broad-shouldered, towering, and unmistakably Vocarian. His eyes flicked over the seats with calculated intensity. Lyra felt the shift instantly. The room tightened, breaths held, wings tucked, tails coiled. The guards rarely entered classrooms. When they did, it was never subtle. Zyrak pointed straight at her. "You. Human girl. Stand." Every head snapped toward Lyra. Her pulse didn't rise, her breath didn't change. She closed her datapad calmly and met Zyrak's stare. "What's the accusation?" she asked, voice even. "Restricted systems were breached. The signal originated near your console. You'll come with me." "That's incorrect," Lyra replied. "My console was offline." Zyrak's mandibles edged into something like a humorless smirk. "You'll answer questions elsewhere." Before she could rise on her own terms, he reached across the aisle and clamped a heavy hand around her wrist, dragging her upright. Gasps rippled through the room. Humans weren't fragile, but they also weren't grabbed. Not like that. Not by a Vocarian twice their mass. Lyra didn't resist, not yet. Instead, she studied the pressure of his grip, the angle of his stance, the rhythm of his breathing. The world narrowed into details. Heartbeat 1. Zyrak shoved her ahead of him, forcing her through the door. She kept her steps measured. Behind them, her classmates exchanged anxious whispers. Heartbeat 2. Her wrist tingled from the force of his hold. She flexed her fingers to keep circulation steady. Heartbeat 3. Her implant pulsed a silent alert on her palm. The hacking signal was still active, now deeper in the Academy network. If she had triggered it, the activity would have stopped the moment she left her console. Heartbeat 4. She scanned the corridor's reflective panels. Zyrak looked confident, too confident. He thought he'd already won. Heartbeat 5. 2 guards followed behind them, hands hovering near their stun batons. They expected a struggle. They expected a frightened human. Heartbeat 6. Lyra's mind charted the layout of the corridor, ventilation shafts overhead, sensor nodes, emergency rail along the left wall. The Academy always left options if you knew where to look. Heartbeat 7. The active intrusion signature flashed again across her implant, now indicating the reactor wing. Her stomach tightened. Whoever was in the system wasn't a student playing with security panels. Heartbeat 8. Zyrak jerked her forward, annoyed by her silence. Walk faster, human. You think you can hide what you accessed? I didn't access anything, she said. The breach isn't coming from me. He laughed, a deep, low vibration. Every human says that. You creatures adapt quickly, but you still believe you can outsmart trained officers. Lyra didn't answer. She saved her breath. Heartbeat 9. She shifted her weight subtly. The guards behind her didn't notice. Zyrak didn't either. He should have. Heartbeat 10. Lyra moved. She rotated her wrist against the weakest point of his grip, stepped sideways, and used his forward momentum to pull him off balance. Then, precise, controlled, she pressed her shoulder into his center of gravity and redirected him downward. It wasn't a violent throw. It didn't need to be. His bulk met the floor with a heavy, stunned thud. The hallway fell silent. The two guards froze. Zyrak stared up at her, disbelief flooding his features. His hand twitched, unsure whether to reach for his weapon or push himself up. Lyra stepped back, palms open, posture neutral. Not threatening, just in control. "You dragged the wrong student," she said softly. "If you'd stop to check the signal, you would know the breach is still active." "Lies," he growled, struggling to rise. Lyra tapped her wrist implant. A red notification expanded in holographic form. Intrusion source shifting, reactor sublevel. Status, high risk. Perpetrator, unknown non-student signature. The guards leaned in, startled by the identification tag. This wasn't a prank, and it wasn't human. Zyrak's expression wavered. "How did you get access to that readout?" "I didn't," Lyra replied. "It came to me because my console was one of the panels monitored for cross-connection. Whoever broke in tried to use the unused terminals to mask their entry." One of the guards exhaled sharply. "Warden, the breach isn't coming from her." "She's right." Zyrak glared at Lyra as if the truth itself had betrayed him. "So you're suggesting another intruder is inside the academy?" "I'm not suggesting," she said. "I'm telling you." A beat of silence passed, heavy and uncomfortable. Her voice remained steady. "You wanted a culprit. Not the truth. That's why you grabbed me without checking the logs." The guard behind Zyrak shifted uneasily. "Sir, we should contact command. If the reactor wing is involved." Lyra cut him off quietly. "There's no time. The intrusion is climbing through the environmental controls. Whoever it is intends to disable the failsafes." Zyrak opened his mouth to snap back, but his wrist chimed with a frantic message. "All security, proceed to reactor sublevel. Possible sabotage." The hallway filled with the sharp scent of rising fear. Lyra didn't step back. She looked at Zyrak evenly, tone calm, deliberate, and unmistakably human. "You dragged me out of class for a crime I didn't commit. You wasted time. And now you're behind." Zyrak's fists tightened. Shame flickered through his eyes, then frustration. "This isn't over," he muttered. "No," Lyra said, walking past him, "it isn't." She paused just long enough for her final words to settle in the charged air. "And if you still think dragging me was a good idea, you'll regret that too." The guards exchanged uneasy glances. Lyra didn't look back. She was already analyzing the quickest route to the reactor wing, because someone dangerous was inside the academy, and every second mattered. The path to the reactor wing spiraled through the academy's lower decks, each level dimmer than the last. Emergency lights pulsed along the ceiling, guiding the security personnel who rushed past Lyra in scattered clusters. None of them stopped her. None dared question the quiet human girl moving with steady purpose. Zyrak followed several steps behind, jaw clenched, posture stiff. His earlier confidence had evaporated. The guards accompanying him avoided making eye contact with Lyra, unsure whether to treat her as a suspect, a witness, or something far more complicated. Lyra didn't slow. Her implant continued feeding live intrusion signatures, sharp pulses climbing deeper into the reactor's auxiliary systems. Whoever had hacked the terminal wasn't hiding, they were digging. A soft rush of footsteps echoed from behind. Lyra glanced back and found her three classmates, Talon, the avian pilot, Irix, the crystalline analyst, and Voran, the scaled medic, catching up. "You're going toward the breach?" Talon asked, wings tucked tight. "We thought." "I'm going to prevent a disaster," Lyra answered. "And you shouldn't be here." Voran's frilled crest lowered in concern. "Alone?" Better alone than dragged again, Lyra said, flicking a brief look toward Zyrak. Zyrak bristled but stayed silent. Irix tilted their translucent head, a prism catching the red lights. We believe you. We're coming. Lyra hesitated. She didn't want them in danger, but time was bleeding away. She turned and resumed moving. Then stay behind me, and do exactly what I say. They reached the reactor wing entry, a reinforced chamber sealed behind triple-layered blast doors. The main door was half open, jammed by something wedged deep into the locking tracks. Someone forced their way in, one of the guards murmured. No, Lyra corrected quietly, stepping closer. Someone slid through before the doors closed. Talon frowned. Something small? Something thin, Lyra replied. She crouched, tracing her fingers over the bent metal. The marks weren't scratches, they were heat distortions, as if the intruder's body temperature had spiked enough to soften the alloy just long enough to slip through. Zyrak stared. That isn't possible. It is, Lyra said. If the intruder is Mirrath. Voron's pupils widened. Mirrath? They're extinct. Extinct, Lyra repeated, or hiding. A sudden metallic click echoed from inside the chamber, followed by the distant hiss of automated vents shifting out of sequence. Lyra rose. They're bypassing environmental safeties. If they open the coolant valves without stabilizing the core, we'll lose half the academy. Zyrak gestured sharply. Guards, with me. Lyra stepped in front of him. If you charge and yelling, you'll drive them deeper into the sublevel. Mirrath Shades don't fight head-on. They strike when cornered, then vanish. You seem very knowledgeable about a species no one has seen in over a century, Zyrak snapped. My mother worked on Concordat threat profiles, Lyra said. I read her archive files. Talon blinked. Your mother was a strategist. Lyra didn't answer. Her gaze settled on the faint shimmer drifting along the corridor walls, heat residue, almost invisible, but there. The Mirrath was close. She turned to her classmates. Stay at the entrance. If anything moves past you, alert me. Zyrak scoffed. You aren't going in alone. Lyra met his stare. You can follow if you don't interfere. It wasn't permission. It was a warning. She slipped inside. The reactor wing hummed like a sleeping giant, its spiraling conduits glowing faint blue. Panels lined the walls, each displaying fluctuating power readings. And in the center walkway, a faint ripple of distortion moved across the floor. Lyra froze, eyes narrowing. There. A shape flickered, barely visible, limbs elongated, body slender, skin reflective like polished glass catching stray light. The intruder skittered across the wall with inhuman grace, its movements too precise to be random. The Mirrath Shade. Lyra stepped forward slowly, careful not to trigger its instinct to vanish. You don't belong here, she said softly. You're tampering with a reactor that can vaporize this entire deck. The Shade paused, head tilting like a creature studying prey. Its voice, when it spoke, was a whisper of layered echoes. Human. Curious. You walk toward danger instead of away. Because I understand what you're trying to do, Lyra replied. And I know you didn't come here to destroy the academy. If you wanted destruction, you would have hit the coolant lines first. The Shade's body flickered, surprise. Zyrak and two guards stepped into the chamber behind her. The Shade reacted instantly, its form tightened, posture sharpening like a blade. Lyra lifted a hand. Stop. Let me handle this. Zyrak hissed under his breath but didn't move. Lyra turned back to the Shade. Why the infiltration? No communication, the Shade whispered. No alliance. Only fear of our name. So we watch. Lyra took a measured breath. You triggered the alert. You used the empty terminals to mask your access. That's why they thought I did it. Humans are convenient suspects, the Shade murmured. The galaxy fears your kind. They shouldn't fear us, Lyra said quietly. Not unless someone gives us a reason. The shade shifted its weight, considering her. Its reflective surface caught the reactor glow, bending it like liquid metal. Lyra stepped 3 paces closer, moving with intent but not aggression. The shade didn't flee. "You're studying reactor patterns," she said. "Why?" "To learn what the Concordat hides," it answered. "Power. Secrets. Weapons." Lyra shook her head. "This is a school. The only weapons here are ignorance and bad decisions." Behind her, Zyrak growled. She ignored him. The shade leaned forward slightly. "You are different. You do not tremble." "Trembling wastes time," Lyra said. "And you have very little left before the system locks you inside." The shade glanced at the panel beside it. Lyra's timing was perfect. Lockdown would seal the wing in seconds. "I can get you out," she said. "But you're ending your intrusion now." The shade hesitated. A dangerous creature, cornered by logic. Finally, its body flickered in agreement. Lyra raised her wrist implant. "Hold still." She initiated a manual override, severing the shade's unauthorized connection. Panels reset across the room. The reactor's fluctuations smoothed into steady lines. A deep hum vibrated through the chamber as safety locks engaged. The shade stepped back from the wall. "You spared me." "No," Lyra corrected. "I prevented a disaster." Zyrak marched forward. "We're detaining it." Lyra blocked him with a single step. "No, you're not. Your team can't contain a Mirrath. And you'll lose more officers trying." The shade inclined its head toward her, an alien gesture of respect. Lyra tapped her implant, pulling up the recording of the shade's hack, the intrusion traces, and the sequence proving she wasn't involved. She handed the data to Zyrak. "Here. Everything you need for your report." Zyrak's jaw clenched as he stared at the evidence, proof he had dragged the wrong student, acted on bias, and ignored procedure. The shade slipped back into the shadows, vanishing into the upper vents. Lyra didn't stop it. Neither did the guards. Only when the last ripple faded did she speak. "Next time you accuse someone," she told Zyrak, "be very sure you understand what you're looking at." Zyrak couldn't speak. For the first time since she met him, the man looked genuinely afraid. Lyra walked past him, her classmates falling in beside her. This wasn't over, not for any of them. The tribunal chamber was colder than the rest of the academy, deliberately so. Its towering columns and circular layout amplified every footstep, every breath, every unspoken judgment. Lyra walked through the central aisle with her classmates behind her, feeling dozens of eyes tracking her progress. Faculty members of multiple species filled the elevated seats. Their faces revealed curiosity, unease, and in a few cases, open apprehension. Humans had been attending Astraeon Academy for years, yet many aliens had never seen one challenge a senior officer and succeed. Zyrak stood near the center podium, his posture stiff, mandibles tense. His armor had been polished, but it couldn't hide the small tear along the shoulder plate from where he'd fallen earlier. He kept his gaze fixed forward, refusing to meet Lyra's eyes. A chime rang. The presiding arbiter, a six-eyed Archeon elder, tapped a crystalline staff against the floor. "This hearing will examine the breach in Sector 5, the involvement of student Lyra Hale, and the actions of security warden Zyrak Voruin. Evidence will be reviewed, statements heard, and judgment rendered." Lyra stepped into the focus circle, an illuminated ring that captured every movement. She felt its warmth spread along the soles of her boots. "Lyra Hale," the arbiter began, "you were forcibly escorted from class during a security alert. Do you confirm the events submitted in your statement?" "Yes," Lyra replied. "Zyrak accused me without verifying the actual intrusion source. The breach originated in the reactor sector, not my console." A holographic projection flared to life above them, displaying her recording, the same one she had provided earlier. It showed the intrusion tracing patterns, the reactor fluctuations, and the shade's unauthorized access trail. Whispers rippled across the chamber. A Viori elder leaned forward, crystalline body shimmering. This signature, it matches the extinct species known as Mirrath. They're not extinct, Lyra said calmly. They're hiding. Another faculty member narrowed his eyes. And you claim you encountered one directly? I don't claim it, Lyra answered. I documented it. Her implant projected a frozen frame, the shade's flicker of reflective limbs caught by environmental sensors. The moment lasted only a fraction of a second, but it was unmistakable. The chamber erupted with murmurs. Even the Arbiter looked unsettled. Zyrak finally spoke. With respect, the human exaggerates. The image is too distorted to be certain. Lyra turned toward him. You were standing beside me when it moved across the wall. Zyrak stiffened. The Arbiter raised a hand, silencing the room. Warden, you conducted the initial detainment. Present your account. Zyrak inhaled sharply. An unauthorized signal emerged from Sector 5. The system flagged it near the human's terminal. Protocol required immediate action. I moved to apprehend her before she could escalate the breach. Lyra's jaw tightened. You dragged me out of the room without asking a single question. I acted to prevent potential sabotage, he snapped. Humans carry neural interfaces that can access protected systems. The risk was real. And yet, Lyra replied evenly, the breach continued unsubdued while you argued with me in the hallway. A few tribunal members exchanged glances. The Arbiter folded her thin hands. Warden, the logs clearly show the intrusion originated elsewhere. Why did you not verify the source? Zyrak hesitated. The alarms were chaotic. I made a fast decision based on probability. Probability? Lyra repeated, her voice calm but sharp. Or prejudice. The silence that followed was heavy. Zyrak's jaw tightened. Humans have a reputation for unpredictable behavior. Fast learning. Unrestrained innovation. The Academy trains us to watch for irregularities. Watching is different from targeting, Lyra said. You didn't approach other students using terminals. Just me. The Arbiter lifted a brow ridge. Warden, did you select the student based solely on species? Zyrak's fists clenched at his sides. A faint tremor passed through his shoulders. I believed humans posed a higher likelihood. The chamber breathed as one, shock, disbelief, and in some corners, quiet disappointment. Lyra waited. She didn't want anger, she wanted clarity. Finally, she spoke. I don't want him dismissed. Zyrak's eyes snapped toward her, full of confusion. The tribunal erupted with questions, but Lyra raised a hand. Let me explain, she said. Removing him won't solve the problem. It will repeat with someone else. The real issue is misunderstanding, what humans can do, what triggers us, and what we consider provocation. The Arbiter studied her. What do you propose? Mandatory training for all security staff, Lyra replied. Human behavioral patterns, threat assessment, and calibration of response protocols. Not fear-based training. Awareness training. Several heads nodded slowly. Lyra continued, if humans are viewed as unpredictable, teach your officers what makes us predictable. We're logical unless cornered. We're calm until pushed. We respond proportionally, unless forced to escalate. Her voice stayed steady. Teach them that dragging a human without cause isn't containment. It's ignition. A quiet murmur of agreement spread through the chamber. Even those wary of humans understood the necessity of proper education. The Arbiter turned to Zyrak. Warden. Do you accept the recommendation? Zyrak swallowed hard. His pride fought visibly against reason. But the room's weight pressed down on him, leaving no room for argument. I accept, he said finally, voice subdued. Lyra nodded once. It wasn't forgiveness, it was forward motion. The Arbiter tapped her staff. Then the ruling stands. All security personnel will undergo cross-species behavioral training. Warden Zyrak will complete an extended course and will not resume duty until certified. A soft chime sealed the decision. Zyrak approached Lyra slowly, mandibles tight with conflicted emotion. You could have ruined my career. Lyra held his gaze. You nearly endangered the academy. But I'm not interested in revenge. He exhaled, a sound halfway between frustration and reluctant gratitude. Why spare me? Because you'll learn, Lyra said. And because next time, you'll look at humans with understanding, not fear. He lowered his head slightly. I misjudged you. You misjudged all of us, she corrected. But you're changing direction. Start there. Her classmates stepped beside her, forming a small but unmistakably united circle. The tribunal members observed the scene with cautious admiration. As Lyra turned to leave, the arbiter spoke one final time. Lyra Hale. Your composure under threat reflects remarkable discipline. You showed restraint when others would not. The Academy acknowledges your actions with commendation. A subtle warmth rose in Lyra's chest. She didn't smile, but something eased inside her. Outside the chamber, Talon nudged her with a wingtip. You handled that better than any of us could have. Maybe, Lyra said quietly. Or maybe humans just count faster. Count? Vorin asked. Lyra glanced at the hallway behind them. 10 heartbeats. That's all it took for everything to shift. And Zyrak? Irix asked. Lyra looked toward the distant silhouette of the Vocarian officer, now alone, humbled. He learned something important, she said. Not what humans are capable of. What humans choose. The academy halls carried her words long after she walked away. A calm human was a signal. A silent human was a warning. And once pushed, a determined human was a force the galaxy would never underestimate again. The academy tried to return to normal in the days after the tribunal, but the atmosphere carried a shift, subtle, unspoken, unmistakable. Conversations lowered when Lyra passed. Some eyes followed her with newfound respect, others with curiosity, or quiet discomfort. Humans had always stood out on Astraeon. Now they stood out even more. Lyra didn't seek attention. She arrived early to classes, stayed late in labs, and kept her routine steady. But routine couldn't hide the sensation that something inside the academy had changed shape, like a melody missing a note. It started with the lights. On the third morning after the tribunal, Lyra entered the robotics wing and noticed a flicker that wasn't part of the standard power cycle. A faint ripple moved across the overhead projectors, too precise to be a malfunction. She paused under the beam. The ripple paused with her. Talon arrived seconds later, feathers flaring as he stretched his wings. Why are you staring at the lights? Planning to glare them into obedience? Lyra didn't look away. The system's reacting to something. Power surge? Not exactly. She tilted her head. It's following me. Talon blinked. That's concerning. Lyra lifted her wrist, scanning the frequency signature. It wasn't a hack, but something lighter, like the echo of a presence brushing across circuitry. Her stomach tightened. Not hostile. Not invasive. Observing. She turned sharply toward the far wall and said, quietly, you came back. A shimmer peeled from the corner, just a faint distortion. Talon's feathers rose in alarm. The shade, he whispered. Lyra nodded. It's watching. The distortion steadied, rippling into the familiar outline of the Mirrath Shade. Its reflective body gleamed softly under the lights, less frantic than before. More deliberate. Talon stepped behind Lyra, not for protection, but because he knew she understood the creature better than anyone else. The Shade's voice drifted through the room like layered wind. You spoke truth. You did not expose me. I didn't need to, Lyra replied. You weren't trying to destroy anything. You were looking for answers. The Shade's head tilted. You see more than others. Only because I listen. The Shade approached slowly, its movements controlled. Lyra noticed its limbs no longer jittered with tension. Its presence felt less like a blade and more like a fragile shadow testing its boundaries. Talon finally found his voice. "Why return?" "The tribunal, we thought you vanished into the vents." "I watched," the Shade answered. "From the walls. From the wires. The Academy hides many paths." Lyra crossed her arms. "You risk exposure coming here." "Risk is the only path to knowledge," the Shade murmured. "And I seek clarity." A rare tone slipped into its voice, something almost like humility. Lyra stepped closer. "What clarity?" "You defended truth. You calmed conflict. You saw motive where others saw threat." Its body flickered, expressing emotion in fractal glints. "Why?" "Because you weren't the enemy," Lyra said. "And because fear shouldn't decide every action." The Shade studied her in silence. Then, to Lyra's surprise, it asked, "What is it that humans fear?" Talon's brow ridge rose. "That's complicated." Lyra kept her gaze steady on the Shade. "Humans fear losing control. Losing those we care about. Being misunderstood. Being cornered into choices we didn't want to make." The Shade absorbed her words as if cataloging each one. "You fear isolation," it said. "Yet you walk alone often." "I walk alone when I need space," Lyra replied. "Not because I want to be separated." Before the Shade could respond, a sharp hiss cut through the intercom. "Attention, Research Lab 4 lockdown. Security en route. Students clear the area." Talon snapped his wings tight. "That lab is 2 doors down." Lyra's pulse quickened, not with fear, but focus. "Let's move." They dashed into the hallway. Panels flashed crimson as lockdown barriers descended. Through the lab's transparent shield, Lyra spotted a cluster of faculty members trapped inside, pounding on the interior controls. The room lights flickered erratically. "Something activated the containment protocols," Talon said. "But no alarms before now." Lyra stepped toward the barrier. "Look at the power lines in the ceiling." Talon followed her gaze. "Those distortions, same as the reactor wing?" "No," Lyra said. "This pattern is different. But familiar." A soft shift rippled beside them. The Shade moved closer, its reflective surface absorbing the chaotic lights. "Not me," it said before Lyra could ask. "Another presence." "Another Shade?" Talon asked. The creature shook its head. "No. Something else hiding in the systems. Small. Clever. Hungry for data." Lyra stiffened. "Show me." Without speaking, the Shade extended a limb and pointed to a corner panel near the ceiling. A slight bulge disrupted the smooth surface, barely visible. Lyra narrowed her eyes. "Crawlbots don't move like that. And Academy bots don't override safety locks." Talon glanced at her. "So what does?" "A scavenger worm," Lyra said. "But those are banned tech." "Not banned everywhere," the Shade added. "Some planets breed them for espionage." Lyra stepped closer to the panel. "It's feeding on the lock's power node. That's why the door won't respond." "What's the plan?" Talon asked. Lyra exhaled. "I need to draw it out. But if I touch the panel, it could discharge." The Shade rose slightly, body shimmering with energy. "I can help." Lyra met its reflective gaze. "How?" "I resonate with circuits. I can lure the creature away." It paused. "But only if you trust me." Talon's wings tightened nervously. "Lyra." She raised a hand. "I do." The Shade reached toward the panel. Its body emitted a faint harmonic vibration, soft but deep enough to vibrate the metal. The panel quivered. Something inside shifted. Lyra prepared herself. The metal bulged outward, then snapped open as a segmented creature shot out, shaped like a metallic centipede with glowing sensory nodes. It scrambled across the ceiling, heading for the corridor vents. Lyra launched upward, catching the emergency railing and pivoting to intercept its path. She swung her body, using momentum to kick the creature off the ceiling. It fell, skittering across the floor. Talon dove, wings slicing through the air, pinning it with a precise strike. Lyra slapped a containment shield over it before it could recover. Sparks flew inside the capsule as it coiled in frustration. The Shade watched quietly. Efficient. Lyra tapped her wrist, signaling security. We found the cause of the lockdown. The lab is safe. Moments later, officers arrived. Zyrak was among them, now wearing a training badge instead of command insignia. He paused upon seeing Lyra, Talon, and the Shade's lingering shimmer. You again, he said carefully. Lyra handed him the containment capsule. A scavenger worm triggered the lock. You'll want the tech division to analyze its origin. Zyrak accepted it with a controlled nod. You prevented another security breach. Lyra shrugged. Patterns repeat unless addressed. He hesitated. Thank you, for acting quickly. His tone wasn't pride or command, it was respect. Lyra nodded once and turned away. The Shade followed silently. Talon whispered, Lyra, the Academy keeps getting stranger. Not stranger, she said. Just more honest. The Shade's voice drifted through the hallway. Your world and mine share something. We survive by adapting. By observing before striking. Lyra met its gaze. Then maybe we're not so different. The Shade's body flickered within the lights, an acknowledgement. Human, it murmured. The galaxy fears your kind. But I do not. Lyra walked beside it, her steps steady. Good, she said. Fear clouds judgment. Understanding builds alliances. The Shade inclined its head. And somewhere deep in the Academy's circuitry, a faint pulse answered, an echo of a threat still hidden. But Lyra didn't slow. Because now she wasn't walking alone.